welcome to our workshop. My name's Helen and I'm here today for Zen Educate. So thank you for joining us. I'm really happy to welcome Sam, who's our British Sign Language teacher today, and also Andrea, who's our interpreter. So we hope you enjoy the workshop and that you leave inspired and excited to learn more British Sign Language to support the children and the students you work with. I'm going to hand you over to Sam.
My name's Samih, Zebibo. I work at Bourne College. I've been here for almost 18 years now, but most people call me Sam. My interpreter is Andrea. I'm going to say hi. Normally, you expect an interpreter next to each other, but obviously we can't do that because Andrea needs to see what I'm signing. So we thought we'd introduce her because obviously you're looking at a male. The voice it's from a female. So we thought we'd just let you know that's what's happening today. Mostly in sign language, we have a lot of female interpreters. We've got very few male interpreters. So if anybody out there would like to become a male sign language interpreter, there is a bit of a shortage at the moment. So it's something for you to think about. So
brilliant. Thank you. Thanks.
So yeah. Just want to say deaf people, hearing people are exactly the same. The only thing is just a different point of view. That's all. So deaf people can do pretty much everything that you can do apart from hear.
Thank you for the introductions. Okay. I'm going to hand over to Samih now. So we're going to ask you to screen share, Samih, and I'll pass over to you for this section of the workshop. And then I'll just pick up with some questions at the end. Okay.
Okay, so I've taught deaf awareness. I do a couple of jobs in the college. I do deaf awareness and sign language up to level 3. And I also teach the deaf and hearing students as well. Just want to think about body language, because I'm sure you can recognize body language the same as hearing people can recognize body language as deaf people do. I imagine that the British are a little bit more reserved with their body language, maybe compared to some other countries, for example, Greece or Italy, or maybe southern Mediterranean countries. They're a little bit more generally effusive with their body language than we tend to be here in Britain. So sometimes you have to be careful. I've approached people thinking, oh, they're deaf, and they haven't been. They've just been hearing people just talking quite well with their hands and their body language. Deaf people are usually very good at recognizing body language and emotions. Are similar to way the hearing people get to use tone of voice, intonation. You can know when somebody's in a good mood, somebody's in a bad mood by what their voice is sounding like. So we do the same with body language. You may have noticed that sometimes I stop signing and my interpreter carries on. This is because BSL and English are slightly different, so I tend to give the information fully, and it takes a little bit longer for Andrea to translate that back into English for you all. Okay, so I'm sure you can see the traffic lights. You know what you're supposed to do. You know what you're not supposed to do for the traffic lights. So green, go ahead, red, stop. Amber, get ready to stop. And the same with the health and safety. That's very visual. You can see the different signs, different symbols, and you can recognize those. So this visual communication is very, very important, especially for deaf people. And obviously for people who don't speak English, or people who need information quite quickly without a lot of written language. So sign language is the same. It's a different language, the same as you've got French and German and Spanish. A question I get asked regularly is sign language the same in all the countries of the world? And it isn't. Each country has their own specific sign language. But it's quite interesting because American, they use ASL. Here we use BSL, British Sign Language, which is vastly different to American Sign Language. The reason is, a few centuries ago, man came from America asking for information about British Sign Language. The British said no, sent him on his way. About 300 years ago. So the American man got on the boat to France. France were very, very happy to give him information about sign language. So that's why sign language in America is similar. It's got roots to the French sign language. So we've got the similar sign language to Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa. And America's got similar sign language to France. Okay, so this is something, a way of giving the information that deaf people like. You've got a few buzzwords and you've got lots of pictures, and it's quite graphic and quite visual. Similar to where you've got a picture, you've got nice waterfall, you've got the plants, you can paint the scene and it looks quite peaceful and tranquil. And that's kind of the way sign language works as well. So we kind of paint the picture as we're talking. Okay, so communication is quite broad for us. So, we've got different, especially if you're on the plane, you've got the different air traffic controllers doing different things. So for us, sign language and communication has got a lot better over the past few years. And there are lots of attitudes that deaf people couldn't do anything, but now, because of the new mobile phone technology, we've got FaceTime, we've got WhatsApp, we can make video calls, we can send text to each other, so it's a lot easier than it used to be. So, thinking about how you would know that someone is deaf. Okay, so maybe they'll let you know that they're deaf. Maybe they won't, depending on the situation. It's quite interesting. A lot of people say, I'm sorry, I'm deaf. And you think, well, why is that a problem? Why are you apologizing for being deaf? Because nobody ever says, oh, I'm sorry, I'm hearing. Do they? I'm sorry, I can hear. Nobody ever says that. So very strange that people would apologize for being deaf, really. So for myself, if somebody's talking to me and I don't understand, I just say, oh, I'm deaf. But normally apologize. I might ask for a piece of paper so people can write things down. You may recognize somebody because they've got hearing aids in. This is usually very popular with people over the age of 60. You'll see a lot more people wearing hearing aids. You may notice from the tone of voice that the voice isn't quite as clear as usual. Maybe the volume's a little bit too high for the situation. Or conversely, they may lean in and speak very, very quietly because they don't want to draw attention to the fact that they can't hear. You'll probably see somebody making a lot more eye contact than you would normally expect if you're talking to somebody. Eye contact is very, very important for deaf people. I remember a long time ago, my father was cooking something, and I was asking what he was talking about. He told me to wait, hold, wait. And I was getting very agitated with this. Like, why am I being told? My brothers and my sisters got instant access to what was going on in the house, and I was being told to wait for information. And they told me to hold because he was cooking, and it was obviously a little bit dangerous. When he finished the cooking, he sat me down and had a chat, used the eye contact, and then later I got married. I got 2 children of my own. Both of my children are hearing. My wife is hard of hearing. So my daughter's 19, my son is 16. So they're both CODAs, children of deaf adults. So explain that a little bit later on. My daughter wanted to talk to me, and I did the same thing. I said, hold. and I was cooking, I realized, oh, that's what my dad did to me. That's what my father, exactly the same thing as my father did. And is it my thing because I'm deaf, or is it because my daughter's hearing? It's just one of those things. And it's just something you need to think about when you're communicating with somebody who needs to look at you. Some people will write very basic English because their first language is sign language. So when you're writing in English, it's as if you're a speaker of a second language, and it's a second language English and the second language English grammar that you're going to be seeing. So unfortunately, because of this, a lot of people think deaf people aren't as intelligent because they don't realize they're actually trying to write something in their second language and not their first language. You may see people using gestures. You may see people using sounds. I'm sure that there's lots of gestures that you would have normally as hearing people. So if you're in a noisy pub, you'd maybe go beer to gestures to somebody. There might be like a baby if you want to be quiet, maybe. Maybe banana. So there's lots of gestures that you might do that we do also. Or money. Monkey. So I'm sure you've got the same gestures. We do exactly the same gestures as well. So hearing, as a hearing person, you rely mostly on verbal communication. As a deaf person, we rely on visual communication. So you may have a few facial expressions to go with your words, as the same way we also have different facial expressions to go with our signs. It's just the non-verbal body language will be the same whether you're deaf or whether you're hearing. You may find them ignoring noises, or if the telephone's ringing or the doorbell's going, they might look like they're ignoring that. Might be difficult to follow conversations, or they might give you the wrong answer to the question that you might be asking. There may be a lot of misunderstandings in your conversation. Okay, so just give you some causes of deafness. So there's about 7 different reasons that people think that cause deafness. The main one is age. Most people over 60 probably will start losing their hearing at some point. So that's the biggest category, I think. Another category could be an infection or a virus. Another one could be toxic drugs or medication. So a virus could be like an infection you've got through swimming, or a virus that you've picked up, maybe. Your medication may be ototoxic, so they damage the ears if they're given to pregnant moms. Could be noise-related deafness. I think quite a few years ago, health and safety wasn't great. People digging the roads didn't necessarily need ear defenders. Again, a lot of people with noise-related deafness as they got a bit older. I think health and safety now, you've got to protect your ears. You've got to make sure you look after sound levels. And also the DJs in the clubs, they have to wear earplugs as well, just to protect their hearing. It could be through trauma or accidents. So if you fell from a great height, maybe, or if you're in a crash or had an injury that way. It could be genetic. You could be predisposed to be deaf through this is a lot in the Asian community in the UK. I'm not sure about other communities. I think this is because of the traditional marriages. So you get a lot of the genes get passed on through families. So some other conditions also can get passed on with that. I know a deaf couple from Scotland. They're very, very strongly deaf, and there are 8 generations of deafness in their family. And then the last child was born hearing, which was a bit of a shock for them because they expected a lot of deaf children. So yeah, it's a bit of a shock to have a hearing child in a family of all deaf people. So thinking about, does anybody think what the last one could be? We have no idea. Medics don't seem to know. Complete surprise, everything's gone fine, nothing's happened, child's deaf. We don't know why.
No.
So I asked my parents about why I was deaf, and my mum explained that mine was a medical reason for being deaf. So I have 2 brothers, 2 sisters. I'm the youngest in the family, so I'm the baby of the family. 2 older brothers, 2 older sisters. But I was, because I was the last child, I was very, very spoiled. I think that was because I was deaf as well. I got a lot of things that probably I shouldn't have done. So I was very, very stubborn, and I wanted a lot. But I'm thankful really to my parents because they communicated well with me. My father had 5 cousins who were deaf. And initially they thought it could be a genetic reason for my deafness. But they looked into it and they said when my mum was pregnant with me, she became ill, probably looking after my brothers and my sisters. And she went to see the GP, and the GP gave her the wrong medication. I think she was expecting an injection, or she shouldn't have had an injection. I think she was about 2 months pregnant at the time, and obviously the injection she was given damaged my hearing. So when I was born, I looked healthy. Everybody was worried initially until I was born, and everybody's kind of relieved. And I think it was only until I was about 9 months old that people started to doubt. My brothers and sisters were very, very loud in the house. I was fast asleep, not disturbed whatsoever, very, very quiet. My mum thought, this isn't right. The house is too noisy. Tapped me very gently, and I just woke up from that. And then it happened a few times, similar things. Mum wasn't very, very happy because my mum obviously had the experience of the 4 other children, especially my 2 other brothers. So she wasn't very happy. And at one time I was playing cars, like toy cars on the floor. My mum was behind me shouting. Obviously I couldn't hear her doing this. I carried on playing with the cars. And then my mum came nearer. I turned around and started laughing. And I think it was because I see maybe a shadow on the floor. Or maybe I know my mum had like nice perfume, so maybe I recognized the smell and I turned around. Or maybe I felt a little bit of a draft, and that's why I turned around, possibly. But that's why they said, yeah, you're probably deaf because of the medication your mum had when she was pregnant. So I've got everything apparently, but the nerves, some of the nerves going to my brain are missing. They're not working. And that's why I can't hear. But I was born deaf. I'm quite happy with that. I've got used to it. So yes, I do get frustrated with communication, and it can be a bit of a problem sometimes. So how common is deafness? So if we think about, there's maybe about 70 million people in the UK. So there's about 10 million of hard of hearing. Mostly they're going to be over 60.
Yep.
Okay. It's a little bit of the alphabet. I don't know if Helen, you can send that out maybe to people,
No.
or if it's a little bit small, you could Google and maybe get them a little bit bigger for the alphabet. So the alphabet wasn't initially from a deaf person. I think it was from about 15th or 16th century with the monks in Britain. And the monks at that time obviously weren't allowed to talk, so they had to be quiet. And they wanted to devise a way of talking to each other without using their voice. So they did it's not exactly the same, but similar finger spelling chart that they used so they could communicate with each other. And that's how they used in the monasteries. And then that developed a bit more until the alphabet that we've got today. So you've got your vowels, which are all on your fingers and your thumb. So your thumb is A, then you've got E, I, O, and U. Okay. I know deaf people point a lot. And I know in hearing culture that's considered a little bit rude if you point, but deaf people point all the time for lots of different things. So in English you would say a chair, and we've got which one? Which one is it? So you say the chair or that chair. So the point in that case would be our equivalent of saying that chair or the chair over there. So sign language as well. So if you're doing the alphabet, that would follow whichever hand. So if you're right-handed, you sign most of your signs with your right hand. If you're left-handed, you sign most of the signs with your left hand. It's quite interesting for the people that can a bit ambidextrous, and they can use both, so they can pick which hand they like to use the most. Okay, so for British Sign Language, this is the native language of deaf people and children, deaf children and hearing children of deaf parents will get this. So just wondering, maybe you've seen we've got a capital D and a small d. The capital deaf would be for people who use BSL as their first language, strongly identify with the deaf community, feel a deaf identity. These people will go to deaf clubs a lot, involve themselves in a lot of deaf activities, and primarily use sign language as their preferred method of communication. So a small d person may be somebody who prefers oral method, so they prefer to lip read. Maybe their English is quite good. Maybe they've lost their hearing a bit later in life, so their primary language is English and they're still using that. So they'd be small d deaf people. They identify as hearing, they just can't hear. So sign language has its own grammar, it's got its own syntax, it's got its own structure, exactly the same way as English has its own grammar and syntax and structure. But spoken language relies on sound. Sign language obviously relies on vision. You have to be able to see the signs to understand what they mean. So we've got a few different signs. So the English word off, we've got a different signs for depending on what we're talking about. So if we're talking about lights off, so switch the lights off. So your car headlights off. If you switch the computer on and off. So the sign for off would depend on what you're using it for and what you're switching on or switching off. So it's the same English word, but we have many, many different signs depending on the context and what we're doing. Same as yourself, we can do run. You've got we've got the sign for run, which also means manage, control. So sometimes we have different signs for the same English word. Sometimes it's a different English word, but we'll use the same sign depending on the context. So because we go for meaning in sign language, some of the signs will be the same, the lip pattern will be different, but then they might change depending on the context. So if you're a BSL user, it's easier for you to understand a foreign sign language. Some of the signs will be the same, for example, like baby and banana and monkey. It's generally easier to understand than it is for hearing people to understand each other. We do have some international sign language that I started recently. I can understand it, but I can't actually sign very much of it at the moment. It's quite difficult. So there's around about between 100 to 250,000 people using British Sign Language as their preferred method of communication. I think maybe it's, not sure if that's right. I think there maybe should be more like 500, because we may have children of deaf adults who also use sign language as their preferred way of communication as well.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so you got the sentence in English. We've got the man is standing on the bridge. You just for a couple of seconds yourselves, you don't have to show this. It doesn't have to be a fancy drawing. Could you please, everybody, draw a man standing on a bridge? And then just give you a couple of minutes for that and let me know when you're ready. Thank you. Doesn't have to be a posh drawing. A stick man on a stick bridge will be fine. We don't have to show it. Just something for yourself. Everybody ready? Everybody got their little picture? Quiet. Okay. Okay, so I want you to think about, what did you draw first? You just put maybe some messages in chat. What did you draw first? Was it the man or the bridge? Okay, so nobody drew the bridge first and then the man on the bridge. Okay, so I think usually 80% of people will draw the bridge and then they'll draw the little man on top of the bridge. That's normally about 80% of people. And we've had a few in my sign language classes who draw the man first, but mostly I think people draw the bridge first and then put the man on the top. Okay, so just an interesting question. So for yourselves, if you imagine yourselves going for a drink, do you imagine yourselves in the place where you're having a drink? Do you imagine that you're looking at the drink, or do you imagine, I fancy going for a drink? Is that in the words in your head, or is that like a picture? Do you imagine yourself traveling to the place where you're going to get a drink? Is it a specific place, or just a generic place where you're going to get a drink? Okay, so we've got quite a few recently. We've had a few deaf films coming in. We've got A Silent Child, about a family who were hearing and the child was deaf. I'm not sure if it's free on YouTube. You can have a watch of that, possibly. That's quite good. We've got Children of a Lesser God, which is a bit of an older film. So the actress in Children of a Lesser God is the mum in the film CODA. She won an Oscar for, I think she won an Oscar for Children of a Lesser God. And then from Rose in Strictly Come Dancing, and also in EastEnders. So we've got quite a few people that a little bit more awareness of deafness and sign language. So the CODA film was from America. So CODA stands for Children of Deaf Adults. So this is because the children have a deaf parent and they're brought up using BSL, using sign language. So about 10% of deaf children will have deaf parents. 90% of deaf children will have hearing parents, which is a bit of a shock to the hearing parents when they find out that their child is deaf. I think it's a bit of a shock. There's not a lot of help and information available. I think it's improved now, but there didn't used to be a lot of information before. I think I was around about 9 months old before my mother and father suspected that I could be deaf, and before I got my diagnosis. Now, I think they're diagnosing after birth. So my daughter was diagnosed and tested just after 1 day and pronounced this child can hear. So you're getting results a lot faster now. I think they were worried, and then I was worried. They were worried about how we could communicate because we were both deaf, and I thought, well, we'll be fine. We'll be fine. I think maybe she was not quite a day old, maybe, when my daughter got tested. My son was born. I think he was just a few hours old before he had his hearing test. So we were holding him. Doctors came in, put the wires on, gave him a test. It's like, can you just leave us for 5 minutes before you do this? So both my children will be CODAs. We have a lot of CODAs who work as interpreters in the UK. So they've obviously had the sign language from a very, very young age. Some interpreters are not CODAs. Some interpreters just come through sign language classes. And then there's some CODAs who've been involved in the deaf community pretty much since they were born. Fortunately, some children, some CODAs can be a little bit bossy because a lot of the information is given to them sometimes. So you just have to remind them that they are children and that we're the adults, and we can deal with this. So they're both kind of advantages and disadvantages. I think one person lived in Newcastle. He was in Doncaster. His father was ill. He was an interpreter himself. And the father phoned to book an interpreter. He specifically didn't want his son, although his son was an interpreter. It was a personal issue, and he didn't want his son to have to interpret for him for this issue. They phoned and they said, no, there's no interpreters available. It's really, really difficult to find one. We can't find anybody. So unfortunately, they had no choice. Had to take his son with him to the hospital. So trying to think how you'd feel, and the doctor was very straight. Says, "Oh, your father's got cancer." So the son now has got to think, okay, he was in a bit of shock. He's like processed the information that his father's got cancer, and then he's got to tell his father that he's got cancer, and he's got to deal with all that. It's very, very difficult to ask people to do that. They're dealing with emotions of their own, but then they've got to be kind of separate to give the information across. So that's why we don't generally tend to use CODAs or interpreters if they're related to the person that's going to the appointment or is having the meeting. So my son and my daughter used to have parents' evening at the school, and we asked them to book interpreters, and they said, no, we're not booking any. And then I said, well, why? I said, we don't have the funds. I was thinking, but what about the access for deaf people? And they said, well, if we've got deaf children, we can access the funds, but we can't access the funds if the children are hearing, but their parents aren't. We only get the funds for the children, and technically, you don't really need an interpreter really, because we're dealing with the children. But if I managed to find an interpreter that I could go to, and then we could go to the parents' evenings. But hopefully, with the new BSL bill in London, this will improve things for a lot of deaf people. So deaf people usually have two languages, because English is the language of the UK. They have to manage in English, and they also have sign language. So deaf people miss out on the incidental learning things that everybody else does. They can't hear things that are mentioned on the radio. They can't hear the train station announcements. Can't hear bits of news when they're walking into a room, maybe. I remember a few years ago, I was really very proud. I got a new car. The weather was great, so I was having a drive. It was really sunny. It was a lovely day. So, new driver, and I saw these cars moving away at the traffic lights, and I thought, oh, they're moving away for me. I'm so important in my new car. Coming up, and it was very, very hot weather, and I looked in the mirror, and suddenly I saw an ambulance right behind me, and I moved across, and the ambulance sped past me. That was the first experience I'd had of an ambulance coming up at the back and seeing the cars move. So now if I see cars moving in front of me, I know, it's an emergency vehicle, move out the way. And then, so I've been driving now for nearly about 30 years. Just 1 second, I just need to walk about the office because the lights have gone off. Sorry about that. It's automatic because nobody's moving in the office, so the lights go off.
Okay.
So it's interesting. See, I've been driving for about 30 years now, and I can see the ambulance coming. And my daughter's, I said, there's an ambulance. And my daughter, no, there isn't. I can't hear one. No, don't believe you. And then all of a sudden the ambulance came past, and she was quite shocked. But I think we need to, because obviously we can't hear, we need to rely on our eyesight a lot more. So we tend to pick up things that you don't need to pick up because you rely on your hearing for these. So deaf people do rely on their eyes a lot, more so than, and we get tired a lot because we're using our eye muscles. You can hear, you don't really get tired for hearing. You can tune things out if you want to. Okay, so there is international sign language, but countries do have their own sign language as well. But there are similar signs like phone, banana, car. So this is a sample just showing different facial expressions. So you've got what? So if it's a what? So the facial expression would match the tone of voice. So your eyebrows go down a little bit, you're frowning a little bit for this one. This one's more of an angry tone. This is what? It's more of an excited what. So your eyebrows are up, a bit more smiley. Your eyes are open. So generally, eyebrows up is a good thing. Eyebrows down, not very happy. You're angry with something. This is a what? And then which one? This one or that one? Okay, so we've got some preferred technology that we generally use. So you can say deaf, you can say deafened, and say hard of hearing. We don't use deaf and dumb, deaf as opposed. Deaf, hearing impaired, we don't like, but medical people tend to use that a lot. That's used a lot in the medical profession. You think, well, my ears are fine, I just can't hear. That's all. They're not impaired in any way, they just can't hear. I think it depends. I think most people use BSL prefer deaf. People who've lost their hearing might prefer hearing impaired, maybe. Okay, so we'll just give you some basic signs. So this is hello. So in English, we say the question first. In sign language, we say the question at the end. So if we could say, what's your name in English? In sign language, the question comes at the end. So we will say, your name what? Your name what? So you can do that with a quite happy facial expression if you're just generally asking a question. You live where? So this is a sign for where. It's the same as you're looking somewhere. It's kind of a similar gesture to what hearing people can use sometimes if they're looking for where it is. So your name what? You live where? So the third one, your birthday. We always have our hair pulled on our birthday. Your birthday, when? So I tap in the cheeks, when? You arrive here, how? This is how. You. So we shake our heads so that we're not, then happy. Why? This is the sign for why. You like tea? Because we drink tea. We're very posh when we drink tea. Tea or coffee? Which? So some is tea, nothing is coffee. Which? Well, thank you. And we've got please, but you need to mouth thank you or you need to mouth please so people can read and see which one that you're doing. So we'll go back and go hello. Your name what? So with your finger what? You live where? Your birthday when? You arrive here how? So you're asking questions, shoulders go up a little bit because you're curious. You're not happy, so shake your head. Why? You like tea or coffee? Which? Thank you. And please. Okay, so this is what? Where? When? How? Why? And which? Oh, who? This is who. I forgot that. Who? So if you imagine you're a person, that's your person. Who are you? Who is this? And then your eyebrows go down because you're asking who is it? Okay, and we got thank you and please. So remember, the question in sign language always goes at the end, and we can point as well to people. So is it this person we're talking about? Is it somebody else we're talking about? We've got the sign for happy, so you can nod to show yes, I am. I'm happy. If you want to say you're not happy, you just shake your head while doing the same sign. Just shake your head. That automatically means you're not happy or you're not something. Or you can be angry. Angry. Or shake your head. I'm not angry. Not angry. I'm strong. I'm not strong.
Okay.
So if you're not strong, you have to kind of collapse on yourself a little bit to show the difference between you sitting up straight, being strong, and then kind of slouching a little bit and not being very strong. Okay, so we talked about the differences a little bit between BSL and English. So if I was to see this in English compared to the other one, deaf people prefer things more straightforward, more visual. Even my hearing students prefer the more visual ways. Brief and straight to the point. I think the one on the left is a little bit more old-fashioned now. I don't think we use that anymore. It's very difficult to read, and people get bored with it very quickly. Some of these a bit more visual. It's a lot easier. We prefer diagrams, so we prefer things a lot more visual, and now I think a lot more people are becoming more visual with the signs and with the information. Okay, so that's just a brief summary of sign language. So I know we've got about 8 minutes left, so if anybody's got any questions. Okay, I'll stop the screen share and I'll hand back over.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sam, we have some questions in the chat. Okay. Many people asking about the difference between Makaton and British Sign Language. Can you explain?
Okay, yes. Makaton is not an actual language. So we've got BSL as a language. It's got its grammar, it's got its own syntax. Makaton is kind of a communication system that we use for children with learning difficulties or deaf children with additional needs. And I think, so maybe you've got children with autism, and it's a lot easier to teach them. They borrow the signs from some of the signs from sign language, but it follows English. So it follows an English word order with a few signs that they've borrowed from British Sign Language. British Sign Language has got its own grammar. It follows its own rules, the same as English follows its own rules. And Makaton borrows some very, very expressive signs and then puts them into the same style as English.
Okay, thank you. Question, do you feel tired from doing so much signing?
Not really. That's a good question though. Because I was born deaf, I've just got used to it. So it's just something that I'm used to. It's not a problem for me. But it's quite interesting because some of the interpreters who are signing, they get like RSI, and get a little bit stiff, get a little bit of arthritis in the joints, and sign a little bit stiffly after a while. But I've kind of got used. It's not something, I'm just kind of got used to it really. But yes, good question. So another question.
Okay, thank you.
That's a question.
I'm just looking. Questions about how do you start if you want to learn British Sign Language? How can you start?
Okay.
So you could do an introduction to BSL course. We could maybe Helen, you could explain if anybody wants to do a short introduction on Zoom, we could do that. Do it a couple of hours a week if anybody's interested. And then if anybody's local, they can come and do a level 1 course with us.
Okay. Does the introduction, well, it's 2 people, sorry. The introduction have to be people local to Manchester?
No, not necessarily, not if we do it over Zoom, no.
Okay. Cost?
We've got a couple, so on certain benefits it will be free. if you're on certain benefits. And then I think it's about £72, I think, for the 10 weeks, 72, 75 for the 10-week course if you're working.
Okay, we will follow up with an
The
email.
other one's a little bit more.
Yeah, with the
If people are
information.
interested and they want to carry on, that would be.
Okay, we'll email to everybody with the information. Okay, thank you, Sam and Andrea.
You're welcome.
No spelling. Thank you. I just want 3 minutes.
Any more questions, or
I just need 3 minutes at the end. I just need 3 minutes to finish up. So I just want to say, Kieran, I'm going to ask you just to jump the slides on for me. I don't know whether we've got that. So we will send round. Yeah.
There are two. So there's a right-handed and a left-handed. So obviously we've got maybe more people who are right-handed in the country, but if you're obviously left-handed, you'll need the left-handed alphabet as well.
Okay, fantastic, thank you. And Kieran, if we just jump on, we've got a link for you for British Sign Language as well, and there's great little finger spelling exercises on that link as well, so you can use the BSL website for that. And what I'd say is learn to do the finger spelling, because it's such a great start to do that one. And I also just want to mention, if you haven't yet downloaded the app, everybody, all right, if you haven't downloaded the app onto your phone, please download the app, because it's going to be a really easy way for you to be able to see what's going on. You can see about work there. You can message schools directly once you've worked there. You've got access to new jobs as soon as they become available. And we have SEN specialists and team members always here to help you. Okay, always people here to help. And I also want to say, if you are looking for a long-term role, then we'll invite you to a trial day, and you can meet the school and they can meet you. And I know lots of you want long-term roles, but honestly, daily supply work is such a great way to find a long-term role. You get the chance to experience a range of school settings and the chance to build relationships with other professionals. So we really hear you. We know that you want those long-term roles, but I really encourage you to come and do some daily supply work for us as well. We'll do our best to find places that are local for you. We don't often get a chance to see you all and to say thank you. I can't see you now, but you know what I mean. We don't often get a chance to be in touch like this. So thank you, but thank you so much for coming, and thank you so much for all the work that you do with us in schools across the country. You know, we think you're fantastic.
Thank you too from us.
Thank you. Thank you so much to Sam and Andrea for joining us today. And we will follow up with an email and links and all of those things. Have a lovely Easter, everybody, and have a good evening. Thank you so much. Goodbye now.